They were too busy celebrating to notice me at first. My wife, surrounded by her affair partners, didn't realize the night was about to change. When I stepped into the room, their laughter died, and the real confrontation began. Mark's footsteps were heavy as he approached the front door, its polished brass handle glistening under the soft glow of the porch light. A sense of unease gripped him as he twisted the key in the lock. The faint pulse of music seeped through the walls, blending with the distant murmur of laughter, a sound that had no place in the solemn quiet of his home. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, the scene before him unfolding like a tableau. Warm light spilled over the luxurious furniture, scattered glasses, and half-empty bottles. The room was alive, vibrating with energy that abruptly faltered when Mark's silhouette darkened the entryway. Sarah was at the center, her smile frozen, the carefree laughter of moments before caught in her throat. The people around her shifted uncomfortably, their glances darting to the man now standing motionless, expression unreadable but eyes sharp, capturing every detail. Mark's gaze swept the room, pausing deliberately on each face, absorbing the betrayal etched in their casual poses and shared complicity. The silence stretched, taut as a wire, waiting for the snap that would follow. The silence that settled over the living room was suffocating. The previously animated scene, a group basking in shared indulgence, eyes gleaming from wine and whispered secrets, now seemed caught in a sudden, merciless freeze. Mark's face remained impassive, masking the storm surging beneath his skin. A faint throb started in his temple, a counterpoint to the bass that still thrummed through the speakers, oblivious to the changed atmosphere. Sarah's hand, which had been holding a glass of wine, trembled slightly before she set it down, its gentle clink against the glass table echoing louder than any word. She glanced around, looking for something, an escape, an explanation, a way to unravel the moment back to laughter. But there was nothing but Mark's eyes, unwavering and cold. "I didn't realize we were hosting a party," Mark said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. It was steady, laced with sarcasm, each word measured, but the pain seeped through, raw and jagged. He moved deeper into the room, the polished soles of his shoes muting against the carpeted floor as he approached. One of the affair partners, a man with tousled hair and a half-smile that now wavered, attempted a chuckle. "We were just," he began, but Mark's gaze snapped to him, silencing the words in his throat. "Please," Mark interrupted, a faint, bitter smirk tugging at his lips. "Don't embarrass yourself by pretending there's an innocent explanation." Sarah swallowed hard, her eyes pleading for a reprieve that Mark refused to grant. "Mark, it's not what it looks like," she started, but he raised a hand, palm out, commanding silence. The room watched, breath held, as if the very air was forbidden from stirring. "Spare me," Mark said, the sarcasm that coated his voice now cracking, revealing the edge of pain beneath. "Not tonight. Not here where I've built my life, where we built a life." He took another step forward, his eyes locking onto Sarah's. The emotions roiling within him felt like a battle, a push and pull between the calm he wore like a mask and the rage threatening to shatter it. The others shifted uneasily, some casting glances toward the exit, as if plotting quiet escapes. Mark noticed but said nothing. Let them skulk away, he thought. They were collateral in this brutal moment, mere footnotes in the story of his unraveling world. Sarah's voice, small and brittle, broke the silence. "I was going to tell you. It's complicated." Mark let out a bitter laugh, devoid of any real humor. "Complicated? Yes, I can see that. A cozy gathering with strangers in our living room, celebrating what exactly? Your triumphs? My failures?" His eyes swept the room, the silence swallowing each word as soon as it left his lips. The others averted their eyes, pretending fascination with the floor, the walls, anything but the scene unraveling before them. He took a breath, deep and tremulous, as if preparing to dive into deep water. "You all should go," he said, his voice colder now, final. "I'd like a moment with my wife." There was no hesitation. The guests, relieved at the reprieve, murmured hurried goodbyes, moving past Mark as if he were a spectre. A few stumbled, avoiding the eyes that followed them out, eyes that promised this story wouldn't end here. As the door clicked shut, the room, now emptied of outsiders, felt cavernous. Sarah stood alone just a few feet away, facing Mark like a supplicant before judgment. "I'm listening," Mark said, folding his arms. The expression on his face had changed, shifting from fury to something more dangerous, a deadly calm. The sound of the clock ticking filled the silence, measuring time as Sarah's explanation hung in the air, unspoken. Sarah's lips parted, but no words came. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she struggled to summon her voice, the silence between them more oppressive than any accusation. Mark's eyes bore into her, waiting, demanding. The seconds ticked by, each one stretching out like an eternity. Finally, she looked away, eyes flitting toward the empty wine glass and the scattered evidence of their careless revelry. "Mark, I never meant for you to find out this way," she said, her voice quaking. It got out of hand. The words felt flimsy, as if uttered to comfort a stranger, not the man she had shared her life with. Mark's jaw tightened, and he nodded once, a mockery of understanding. "Out of hand," he repeated, the syllables clipped and metallic. "Is that what you tell yourself when you laugh with them, share with them?" His voice dropped to a whisper, more dangerous than any shout. "When you betray me?" A tremor passed through Sarah. She turned, moving to the window, as if the city lights outside could offer an anchor in this sea of tension. Mark watched her, noting the subtle slump of her shoulders, the way her hands clasped together to stop their shaking. "You don't know how it feels," she finally said, not looking at him. "The silence when you're gone, the way the walls close in. I needed to feel something. I needed to feel seen." The confession hung in the air, tangled in a mix of shame and defiance. Mark's eyes narrowed as he took a step closer, his presence a force she could not ignore. "Seen." His voice, now stripped of sarcasm, was raw. "What part of us did you not see? The years, the trust. What wasn't enough?" A tear slipped down her cheek, catching the dim glow of the room's light. "I tried," she whispered, half to him, half to herself. "But somewhere along the way we became routine." Mark felt the word like a blow. Routine. It echoed back to him, dredging up years of effort, late nights at work, sacrifices he made without hesitation, believing that building stability was the same as building love. His breath caught in his chest, and he fought to steady himself. "So this is how you break routine?" His voice wavered, the anger giving way to something deeper, a dark abyss of disappointment and loss. "By tearing down everything we built and inviting strangers into it." "Mark, I'm sorry." She turned, eyes wide and pleading, but Mark saw only the reflection of the person she used to be. The words tasted hollow in his ears. An apology spoken too late meant more to soothe her guilt than heal his wounds. He looked past her, taking in the room that now felt tainted, as if the walls themselves bore witness to her betrayal. The memories they once cherished were now marred, an ironic reminder that love could exist alongside ruin. A long silence stretched between them before Mark finally spoke, his voice subdued but resolute. "Sorry doesn't change what's been done, Sarah. Sorry won't undo the laughter I heard, the faces I'll remember every time I step into this room." He paused, exhaling slowly, releasing the last remnant of hope he'd clung to. "I came home early tonight hoping for something good," he said, the sadness in his tone deeper than anger. "But I didn't expect this." He stepped back, creating a physical distance to match the emotional chasm that now yawned between them. A chill ran through Sarah as Mark walked past her, brushing against the frayed edge of her resolve. His eyes met hers for the briefest moment, and she saw it finality, cold and immutable. It wasn't hate that stared back at her, but a painful acceptance. He didn't turn around when he reached the doorway. "Pack your things," he said softly, the echo of his footsteps trailing down the hallway. "This house isn't home anymore." And then he was gone, leaving Sarah in a silence that felt deeper than any solitude she had ever known. The soft thud of the front door, closing, reverberated through the house like a gunshot, leaving Sarah frozen in place. The weight of Mark's parting words pressed down on her, squeezing the air from her lungs. She reached out blindly, gripping the edge of the windowsill to steady herself as the full realization settled in. He was truly gone. The laughter and warmth that had filled the room earlier felt obscene now, echoes of a life she had let slip through her fingers. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant hum of the city outside. Her vision blurred with unshed tears, and she turned to face the room, seeing it as Mark must have a desecrated monument to their life together. The glasses, the wine, the remnants of a night that was meant to fill the void now stood as evidence of her betrayal. With a trembling hand, Sarah picked up the wineglass she had abandoned, its rim still marked by the faint imprint of her lipstick. She stared at it, the ruby stain mocking her, before hurling it to the floor. The shatter was sharp, almost cathartic, scattering shards across the hardwood. But the rush of satisfaction was fleeting. The room remained unchanged, haunted by what had transpired. In the hallway, Mark's departure played out with every heavy step he took to the car. He paused as he reached it, the night's chill seeping through his coat and biting into his skin. He opened the door but didn't climb in immediately. Instead, he stood there, his hands gripping the edge of the roof until his knuckles whitened. The urge to return, to demand more answers, surged within him, a last-ditch battle between anger and despair. But the memory of Sarah's eyes glistening with remorse, but tainted with the echoes of all the nights she chose someone else, stilled him. There was nothing left to say, no truth that could change what he now knew. Mark sank into the driver's seat, the familiar scent of leather mingling with the faint trace of her perfume. A remnant from mornings when they'd driven together, talking about mundane plans and silent dreams. Now, the memory felt suffocating. He turned the key in the ignition, the engine purring to life with mechanical indifference. He glanced once at the warm light spilling from their living room, then put the car in gear and drove away, the streets yawning open to swallow him whole. Back inside, Sarah dropped to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps as the reality of Mark's departure crystallized. The anger that had simmered through their marriage, unspoken but palpable, flared into a sharp regret. She pressed her palms against her face, blocking out the sight of the shattered glass, the room that had become a graveyard for their life together. Memories flickered behind her closed eyes, the way Mark used to look at her when he thought she wasn't watching. How he'd tuck a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. The warmth of his laugh when he let himself forget the weight of responsibility. She had pushed all of it away for moments of thrill, for a brief return to feeling untethered. Now, the consequences loomed larger than she had anticipated, overwhelming and unyielding. The echo of the confrontation replayed in her mind, each word a knife edge. She clutched the edge of the coffee table, feeling its solid presence as a last anchor, but the emptiness inside her swelled, drowning out rational thought. All that remained was a gnawing sense of loss and the cold truth that she had crossed a line there was no coming back from. A soft knock on the door startled her, and she raised her head, heart pounding. For a brief, irrational moment, hope flared. But when she opened it, it was only one of the neighbors, eyes wide with concern and words stumbling over themselves. "Sarah, is everything okay? We heard." She nodded quickly, swallowing the remnants of her sob. "Yes, just an accident. Thank you." She closed the door before they could say more, turning back to the mess that lay before her both in the room and in the life she'd shattered. Hours passed, marked only by the rhythmic ticking of the clock. The once lively house seemed to settle into a deeper silence, as if mourning alongside Sarah. The shards of glass lay untouched, glittering like cold stars scattered across the floor. She sat with her back against the wall, knees pulled to her chest, staring into the hollow space Mark had left behind. The reality of what she'd done unspooled slowly, cruelly. Every detail of their life together, birthdays spent with laughter, quiet mornings over shared coffee, the way he used to kiss her forehead before leaving for work spilled back into her mind, a relentless tide of what once was. How had it come to this? How had she allowed the thrill of fleeting attention to erode the foundation of years? Mark, meanwhile, drove aimlessly through the city, past shadowed alleys and quiet parks. The streets were cloaked in a velvet darkness, interrupted by the hum of street lamps and the occasional flash of headlights. His mind replayed the confrontation in fractured snippets, each word they exchanged cutting deeper. He gripped the steering wheel until his hands ached, trying to channel the chaos into something tangible. A sudden memory surfaced, unwanted but vivid. Sarah, years ago, laughing as they danced in the kitchen to an old song on the radio, her hair catching the light as she spun. The love he felt then was all-consuming, a kind of joy he hadn't realized he could lose. He blinked hard, focusing on the road as he tried to shake the memory. But it was futile. It clung to him, a reminder that even betrayal couldn't erase the depth of what they once shared. He pulled over near an empty lot, the quiet enveloping him like a shroud. The urge to scream, to let out the churning anguish inside him, swelled but never broke the surface. Instead, he rested his head against the steering wheel, eyes shut tight against the weight of his thoughts. How did one rebuild after such a complete breach? The question loomed, unanswered. Back at the house, Sarah stood slowly, her limbs stiff and cold. She moved through the room on autopilot, sweeping the broken glass into a small pile. The action felt absurdly mundane, a flimsy attempt at normalcy in the face of a reality so changed. As she tidied the evidence of their argument, she wondered what Mark was doing, whether he was at a friend's house, talking, drinking, or if he too was sitting in silence somewhere, lost in the same storm of regret and anger. A sharp knock at the door jolted her. Her heart thudded painfully, a brief flare of hope that it might be him. But when she opened it, she found herself facing Claire, her closest friend, with eyes full of concern. "I heard about what happened," Claire said softly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Are you okay?" The question was loaded, almost absurd given the wreckage around them. Sarah shook her head, unable to muster the energy to pretend otherwise. "No, I'm not," she whispered, the words breaking the dam inside her. She sank onto the sofa, the cushion still warm from Mark's absence, and covered her face as sobs tore through her. Claire sat beside her, saying nothing for a moment. The silence between them held the kind of understanding that only years of friendship could create. "Does he know everything?" Claire finally asked, her tone tentative, as if afraid to worsen the wound. Sarah nodded, wiping her face with shaking hands. "He knows enough. More than enough." Her voice cracked, and she met Claire's eyes, the realization stark and undeniable. "He's gone." Claire's face softened, a mix of empathy and helplessness. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." The admission stung, but it was the only honest thing Sarah could say. The choices ahead loomed like shadows, none of them offering an easy path. Mark, now parked near the waterfront where they used to walk on warmer nights, finally lifted his head. The breeze from the river rustled the reeds, carrying with it the scent of water and distant rain. The anger had ebbed slightly, leaving a hollowness he wasn't sure how to fill. Divorce. The word echoed ominously, a bridge he hadn't yet crossed but felt himself standing on the edge of. Yet, even in the fury and betrayal, he knew part of him resisted the finality of it. Memories weren't easily discarded. Love, even tainted, left a mark that clung like an old scar. Would there be space for forgiveness one day, after the rawness faded and time worked its alchemy? He didn't know, and that uncertainty gnawed at him. Back at the house, Sarah sat with Claire in silence as dawn crept in, bathing the room in soft light. The chaos of the night felt distant but left a sharp residue. In that pale morning, she resolved to do the only thing she could: start with the truth, no matter how painful, and confront whatever came next. For now, it was enough to hope that someday Mark would find a way to listen. And if he never did, she would have to learn to live with that choice.